Hello everyone, welcome again to another LazyArquitecto live stream where we teach you AutoCAD in a way that is more productive so you can stop wasting your time. As always, we show up here each Sunday at 10 a.m. and that is the time in Pennsylvania. That's where I am right now in the United States. So if your time is important, if you work using AutoCAD, well, this is your channel. So we're gonna start today's presentation, which is gonna be great. We're gonna be like every week, like every Friday, picking a task, a time-consuming task, and trying to make it more efficient, so we can all have a good time working in AutoCAD and not be stressed. Alright, so let me jump and start preparing for today's presentation. Okay, so hope you are doing great today. Let me see. So as always, we're gonna have a moment to ask questions by the end of the presentation, to do some Q&A. So you're gonna have time for that, because that's the beauty of doing a live stream, right? So that you can get your answers in real time. Okay, so let me see over here. All right, I think we are ready to start. Okay. So I guess, yeah, we are ready to start. So let's do this. So on my screen, I have interior elevations that I need to finish. And one of the tasks that I bring today is the task of adding these open to beyond areas. So you can imagine how time consuming this can be if you have multiple elevation projects to do, and you have to manually adjust these open to beyond areas individually. Sometimes you need to adjust the text, you need to mask the text so that you can so that it can read better, and send it to the front. Not only that, but since everything is a single item, you might have different line types, in this case solid instead of dashed, so it's a mess. If this is a minor thing that you do, it's not a problem, but in this case there are multiple open to beyond areas through my interior elevations. Not only that, but I had similar projects for this client, and I don't want to waste time doing this manually. So let's see how we can streamline this process. Okay, so before we have a comment on the chat, and it's our friend, let's see. It's our friend Nima. No, Ali. Hi, Ali. Hope you're doing great. That's awesome that you are here with us. We are live right now on YouTube, bringing you a AutoCAD task, and we're gonna see how we can make it more efficient, So this is a task that I had actually last week at the architecture office where I work, and so I said to myself, well, let's try to make it more efficient, so I don't waste a lot of time, because there were multiple occasions where I needed to put this open to beyond area. Okay, so for that we're gonna create a dynamic block. You can see here, this is a mess. Actually, that's what happened when you use individual items. It's not right. So let's go ahead and erase this too. Okay, so for that we're gonna create a dynamic block. So let's go ahead and do that. So in order to do that, I'm gonna move right about here, and I'm gonna create a rectangle. So a rectangle with some dimensions. I want this rectangle to be 5 feet by 5 feet, and place it right there. This is because this is an approximate size for an opening. So yeah, I could pick 3 feet by 3 feet also. Again, that's per your preference, but the idea is, actually I'm gonna pick 3 feet by 3 feet, yeah, because that's like the standard door opening and stuff. So yeah, gonna make this 2 feet, so it's only 3 feet, 2 feet, like so. All right, now over here I am gonna draw. How do we do this? Okay, so first I'm gonna make this into a block right now with the V shortcut, and maybe say open to beyond. Open to beyond, or lazy open to beyond. All right, so I'm gonna click OK to create this block, where we're gonna again make a dynamic block that can quickly help us add open to beyond areas. So I'm gonna click, I'm gonna select my objects first, my block, and I'm gonna say okay. I'm gonna pick my base point. In this case, I'm gonna pick this corner right here, and we are inside the block environment. Now we need to start adding some parameters and actions. That's how dynamic blocks work. Now I could go ahead and add a linear parameter to start stretching one side, and then add another linear parameter to stretch the other side. But I want to make this even more efficient, meaning I want to be able to stretch this block from one grip in both directions, X and Y. So let's see how we can do that. So instead of using the linear parameter, I am going to use the X and Y parameter. So I'm going to select that, and following instructions says specify base point. So I'm going to pick over here at the bottom, and it's asking me to specify another endpoint. I'm gonna click right here, and finally we need to specify another endpoint for the Y parameter. So I'm gonna click right there, and great, you can see how we successfully placed the X and Y parameter to our block. Again, the reason is because we want to simplify the stretching from our open to beyond area. So we want to be able to stretch it from one side and stretch it in any direction. Now, there's an exclamation mark. That means that it's missing something, and we already know that it's missing an action. But before we add an action, let me jump to the chat. Our friend Ali says, I hope you're doing well. Yeah, Ali, I mean, I feel a little sick, but I'm still here showing up. Because I had this task that I wanted to share with you. So yeah, I'm doing good, my friend Ali. I hope you're doing great too. So let's continue. All right. So before we add the action, I like to add the next items that we use for open to beyond. Remember, we use the X and the text. Or I guess to avoid confusing you, I'm not gonna add the line and the lines in the text yet. Let's keep it with the box yet. So before we add the action, what I like to do is, you see how there are 4 different grips? We actually don't need those 4. We wanna simplify this as much as possible. So I'm gonna right click and say grip display, and we're gonna set it to 1. You can see now that I have the grip right here that I need. So I want to tweak the size of our open to beyond area from only this single grip. Now, in order to do that, we also need to set this parameter from the properties to be chain action. So right now it says change actions to no, but I want to set that to yes, meaning it will let me control both parameters, Y and X, at the same time from one grip. Okay, let's go to the actions now. For the actions, we need to use this action called stretch. So following instructions is asking us to select a parameter. We can either select X or Y, because again, that's just one connected parameter. So I'm gonna click here. And then we need to specify an associated point. And of course, needs to be our grip, where our grip is. So I'm gonna click there. And then we need the stretch frame, or the corner of stretch. So what I need is to enclose this corner where the grip is. So I'm gonna enclose that. And to select objects, I'm gonna select all of this. That will select the square, the grip, and the parameter, and even the point, or the grip. So I'm gonna select that and press enter. And you can see the exclamation mark went away. That means we applied a parameter and action correctly to this block. So let's test it now before we do anything else. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and test it from the ribbon by clicking test block. And let's see what happens. As you can see, we are stretching the block from one grip to any direction, but it's not behaving the way we want it. Originally, we need the open to beyond area to be always a rectilinear, right? But this is not the way we envision it. So that's where we need to apply, or start applying, some constraints to the block so that it can behave the way we want it. So for that, let's go ahead and start applying some constraints. Then I'm gonna go back to the block editor, and again we're gonna see now how we can implement some constraints. All right, so for that I am gonna add over here from my ribbon, I'm gonna add a constraint which is under the geometric panel, and let's look for a constraint called perpendicular. Where is it? It's right here. So we need that constraint, the perpendicular one. It says constrain two lines or polyline segments to maintain a 90-degree angle to each another. That's what we need. We want to keep the 90-degree angle for the rectangle. So I'm going to use that, and I'm going to start adding these two following instructions from the command line, which says select first object. So I'm going to select this, and then I'm going to select this other line from the square, like so. You can see immediately what happened. A perpendicular constraint was added. So before we keep moving, I'm going to test this really quick, see what happens. I like to see how the block starts evolving, and so you can see so weird things are happening. What's happening is that we're having a 90-degree angle right here always, no matter what. You can see. Okay, so that's a progress. So what happened if we apply the same constraint to this other corner? So let's do that. Perpendicular constraint. So I'm going to select this line, this other one. Great. The constraint or perpendicular constraint was added. So let's test it. Look what's going on right now. Again, both corners, the left and the right, are keeping nicely. However, the problem now is the bottom that somehow gets rotated and twisted, and it's a mess. All right, let's go ahead and add the perpendicular constraint to this bottom corner now. So let's go ahead, perpendicular, select this line, this other line, and the new perpendicular constraint icon was added. So let's go ahead and test it. Much better now, right? But it's not perfect yet. We're keeping the 4 size rectangle shape all the time, but somehow it's still rotating and getting far away from our base point. So that would be a problem. So now we don't need a perpendicular constraint anymore, because you see that the 4 corners are nice and 90 degrees. So, but we need a different constraint. The constraint that we need is the horizontal constraint. So let's go ahead and find it, because we need to somehow keep this bottom portion horizontal and not rotated all the time. So let's go back to the ribbon and let's find the horizontal constraint. It's right here. It says constrains a line or pair of points to lie parallel to the x-axis of the current UCS. And that's what we need, because look, that's the x-axis, meaning in this direction, and that's the y. So we need to keep it horizontal. So let's click again the horizontal constraint. and let's apply it to this bottom line. The constraint was implemented, so let's go ahead and test it now. Looks how beautiful it's working now. Perfect. Now, of course, we can turn off the ortho mode, and that way we can pick any random shape, or not shape, but size. And that's the beauty of controlling everything with a single grip. Isn't that great? So our open to beyond area now could be quickly implemented. Now, of course, we're still missing the X and the text and all of that good stuff. So let's keep moving then. We did good progress though. All right, let's go back. And now we need the X lines, right? That represents the open to beyond. So let's add a couple of lines like so. And we need these lines to be also dashed. So let's go ahead and create a layer. So open the layer palette. Maybe we can create a layer called open to beyond dashed. That's all up to you. But the important part is the line type. Line type needs to be either hidden or hidden too. Let's try hidden, and let's apply that layer to those lines. So open to beyond dashed. Here we go. Now let's see what happened once we test this block. Of course, you're gonna see a big problem, because once we start stretching the block, you can see that the X doesn't work or adjust accordingly. So let's go back to the block editor. So what we need to do now is somehow constrain this line to the corner, to each corner. But how do we do that? That's the big question. Well, let's see if we can find a constraint tool over here on the ribbon that we can utilize. So let's see. So the coincident constraint looks like is the one that we need. It says constraints 2 points to coincide. To coincide, or a point to lie anywhere on an object or the extension of an object. So let's try that. So let's select that, and let's follow the instructions. It says select first point or object or auto constraint. So in this case, let's try the auto constraint. AutoCAD gotta be smart enough to know that if this line is coincident or touching that corner, that's what we want to constrain. So instead of us selecting the objects, I'm gonna say auto constraint, and I'm gonna select the objects now. I'm gonna select the square, and I'm gonna select the line, and I'll press enter. Looks like nothing really happens, but you can see a tiny point over here. Do you see that? Okay, so let's test it, see what happened, right? So I'm gonna test the block. Nope, for some reason it's not working correctly. I mean, it's working. You can see this corner, it's keeping together all the time. Take a look. Which again, that's what we wanted. But we have another problem here. So let's we have a comment in the chat first before we keep moving with this block. It's our friend Stafford. If you can give us your real name, that would be great. But Stafford says hi Stafford, hope you're doing great, my friend. We are live here bringing you an AutoCAD task and a way to streamline it and make it easier for yourself. All right, so let's keep moving. All right, so again, what we wanted is actually working over here on the corner. So let's apply that on this other corner now. So let's close the block editor and let's apply the coincident constraint. Let's say auto constraint, and let's select our rectangle and also the line. Press enter, and you can see a coincident constraint was added. So I'm gonna do the same for this other line because we know it works. We already tested on this side. So I'm gonna go ahead and say auto constraint, select the square, select the line, and press enter. Make sure the coincidence point constraint is showing. That means you did it correctly over here. So let's apply it right about here now. It looks like it's there already. I believe since we use the auto constraint, what it does is automatically constraining both points of the line to the rectangle. So I don't think we need to add it anymore. You can see that grip right there. Okay, that's good for us, but let's test it. All right, look. Now both lines are keeping coincidence with the corners of the square, which is great. So let's go ahead and test this in the real environment before we add the open to beyond text and try to keep it centered also inside the rectangle, so that we can actually see what's going on. So I'm gonna save the changes and exit the block editor. Make sure you do that if you are following along. So it's right there. Okay. So there is something that I don't like about this. It's the idea that the grip is floating. That's not right. It's gonna cause confusion. For some reason, the grip is not being it doesn't follow the corner of the rectangle or square. So let's see how we can fix that before we add the open to beyond text and try to figure it out how to keep it centered in the shape. All right, so let's go back. But so far we did a lot actually, because to be able to control this area with one single click, with one single grip, it's great, don't you think? We're controlling a lot of items here. 2 lines, the square, the X and Y directions, but we're still having some difficulties with, again, the grip. So let's go back to the block editor, see how we can fix that. So let's inspect this. So that's the stretch. Okay. Oh, I think. Okay. So what I'm gonna try to do is I'm gonna right click on this stretch action, and I'm gonna say I could modify, but I'm gonna say new selection set. You can see the stretch is not selecting the two lines, and we're gonna try to also do that. So I'm gonna say new selection set. I am gonna go ahead and select this corner. I'm gonna select the objects, in this case all of this, but I'm gonna deselect the line. I don't wanna cause any problems with the constraints, so I'm gonna leave it like that, and I'm gonna press enter. Let's see what happens. Okay, so let's go ahead and test it. Nope, for some reason it's not following. Again, the grip is not following the stretch, which is a problem, you know. Okay, so my second attempt to fix this, the location of the grip, is, let me close this. I knew it was working perfectly before I added these two lines. So what I'm gonna do is undo a couple of times, go back, and reach the state where I had only the square working for us. So I'm gonna remove those two lines. Okay, so at this stage I remember the grip was working or behaving perfectly. So let's see if that's true. Still, and nope, it's not true anymore. So let's go ahead and close this. Control Z, Control C. Okay, let's go ahead and test it. Okay, so the problem was then once we added the horizontal constraint. That was the problem. But we still need the horizontal constraint somehow. So let's see what happened. Again, we're trying to troubleshoot this block here live. That's the beauty of doing a live stream, actually. All right, let's see what's going on. Let me select this, make sure chain action just, number of grips 1, that's fine. The stretch was added there. Okay, let's see what's going on. Okay, I think I have an idea what's going on. Yeah, I think I know. Let's try this third attempt to fix the grip location problem. The way I'm gonna do it is The problem is the order. So the order, whether we add the stretch first or the constraints first. That's the problem. So let's see what's going on. Any questions so far on the chat? Were you able to follow along? What do you think? Let me know on the chat so I can read your comments. Okay, so let me go ahead and test it again, see what's going on. Okay, so far the only problem is over here. We are missing the horizontal constraint. So let's see. So let me go ahead and delete this stretch action and start it from scratch. Again, the order is very important. So I'm gonna also erase this perpendicular constraint, only the one at the bottom. So I'm gonna right click and say delete. I'm gonna only leave these two perpendicular constraints on the top of the square. So let's see over here, let's test it just to understand what we have. So there's no grip, no stretch. And before I add any constraint to the bottom portion of my rectangle, I'm gonna apply the stretch. Again, the order is very important. That's why we were having problems. So let's try this third method. Hopefully it works. So I'm gonna add the action, the stretch in this case, again, only with the two perpendicular constraints on the top, nothing at the bottom. So I'm gonna select my parameter. I'm gonna specify my associated point. I am gonna select my corner, which is right here, and I'm gonna select my objects, which are all of this, and I'm gonna press enter. Okay, so let's go ahead and test this. Now we have the grip, and we are having a 90-degree angle on the left side top as well as the right side top. Now we can try to apply the perpendicular constraint to this corner, and now we can do that because we can see the stretch is working correctly, meaning the grip is not floating around. So let's go ahead and try that. Constraint perpendicular. Let's try that. This corner and this other corner. Let's test it. Great. So far we are able to control our block from one point, which is great. Now, do we need the horizontal constraint again to this corner? I don't think so. I don't think we need it, because again, the block is not rotating anymore, which is great. So, but let's go ahead and test it on the real world environment. I'm gonna close and save the changes right here. So let's move. Nope, you can see that That's not right. So we actually need the horizontal constraint. For some reason, in the test block editor, this was working perfectly. And you see now, when we test it in AutoCAD, like in model space, the whole block is rotating. That's funny. So let's go back to the block editor and implement that horizontal constraint at the bottom line. And hopefully this time everything works perfectly. Let's cross fingers. No, it's not working. For some reason this grip keeps messing up once we add the horizontal constraint. That's not right. How do we solve this? So I'm gonna test it in model space again, because you see different results. You see that, guys? That's insane. So the block in the test environment keeps giving us problems, meaning keeps rotating and flipping. But once we test it in model space, which is where we actually gonna use the block, it works beautiful. That's insane, guys. I'm glad that we figured it out and resolved the grip flooding issue, but it's insane. Who will figure this out? That's crazy. Well, oh my god. What do you think, guys? That's crazy, right? I'm glad that we resolved again the flooding grip problem. But the problem was actually an AutoCAD thing, meaning on the test environment, the block wasn't performing correctly, meaning the grip was floating and the block was rotating. But once we tested in model space, where it actually matters, because we're going to utilize the block here in model space or paper space, the block works beautifully. There is no grip floating around, nothing. Whew. That was crazy, actually. All right, let's keep moving, guys. Let's wrap this up. All right. So I'm not gonna listen to the test environment for this specific block then. All right, everything is working beautifully now. So let's add the X and the text, and for that I'm gonna copy these items from this point. I'm gonna go back to the block editor. I'm gonna paste them. Control V to this corner. Gonna go ahead and adjust it manually as I used to do it every day. I don't do it anymore. So open to vision area. Okay. So the text, of course, let's deal with the text later. I'm gonna leave it for that. It doesn't matter. I need to put it in the center, of course, but I'll do that later. Let's focus on the two lines. Okay. So from now on, only for this specific block, I'm not gonna use the test block because it's gonna give me weird results. I'm gonna use the model space test environment. All right. So I'm gonna add the coincident constraint. Remember that we used before coincident, and I'm gonna do the auto constraint. I'm gonna select my objects, in this case my rectangle and my line, and press enter. You can see a coincident small tiny grip was added at the top and at the bottom, so I don't have to do manually one individually. So I'm gonna go ahead, and before I do that to the other line, I'm gonna test it. Save the changes. Gonna go ahead and stretch. Great, everything is working beautifully now. Not everything, but the line that we coincident constraint is working beautifully. So let's apply the same for the other line. Block and coincident, where is it? Right here, coincident constraint. Let's select the square, and let's select, oops, no, we didn't use the auto constraint, remember? So coincident, let's select the auto constraint option. Let's select the rectangle, the line, and let's press enter. Great, 2 tiny coincident grips were added. So I'm gonna test it. Beautifully. Awesome, guys. All right, so the final piece to this block would be the text. How do we do so that the text keeps always center on our open to beyond area and it's not just in one location or floating around? So let's see how we can do that. Let's go back to the block editor. In this case, I do care about the justification of my text. So far is from the top, justify from the top middle. I don't want that. So I'm going to change that to justify from middle center. And then I'll have this grip. So I can place it exactly on the middle of my open to beyond area. Next, I need to somehow move this text accordingly. So I'm gonna use, I don't need a parameter because we need to somehow utilize the X and Y parameters. Otherwise we'll have an extra parameter that is not connected to this grip. So I must add it to this parameter. So I'm gonna add an action then. And the action can be stretch, can be moved. I'm gonna use stretch. Now, I'll follow instructions to select parameter, of course. That's the parameter I need, the X and Y, because I need to somehow connect it with that grip. Every time I change the shape of my open to beyond area, I need to also my text to do something, in this case move. So select the point, of course it's gonna be this grip, and specify the corner of stretch frame. In that case I need to enclose my text, so I'm gonna go ahead and get really close to this area and click, and then go ahead and go all the way up here and click. Make sure the text is inside that area, and I am gonna select the objects. In this case is only the text, and I'll press enter. All right, let's see what's happening. Nope, I'm not gonna use the task block anymore because it's showing me different results and it was driving me nuts. So I'm gonna go ahead and save the changes. Let's see what's going on. Okay, so the text is doing something. Instead of staying in the same location, is following my grip, but it's not on the location where I want it to be. I want it to be always on the center. So there are some properties that we can tweak to achieve this. Let's see. Let's go. Oops. What happened there? So let's go ahead and go to the block editor again. Okay. So there are two stretches now. Don't get confused. If you don't know which one you need to change properties, you can simply click on it and you'll see the area. In this case, this was for that corner, but I want the stretch for the text to tweak. So once I have it selected, I can go to my properties, and there are some properties here that we can tweak. The property I'm interested in is the distance multiplier. So let me expand this. Currently it's set to 1, but if we want to keep this center, we need to change that to half. So we can either say half or we can say 0.5, which is the same. And let's see what happens now. I'm gonna save the changes. Awesome. You can see our text is keeping center now, which is great. So, but there's still one problem here. I don't want my rectangle to show up or print when I add my open to beyond, because there's already a frame, there's already some line work or colors that I don't want to change. So for that, I am gonna go back to the block and select the square and place it in a layer that doesn't print. In this case, def points is a good layer, because again, that won't print. You can see it, but you won't be able to print it. All right, so now the next time you draw interior elevations, all you gotta do is simply place your open to beyond area like so and stretch it out, and look how beautiful it looks. And you can quickly copy and paste your block for each area that you need. In this case, that was one area. So you can again quickly resize your open to beyond areas like so. Awesome. So what do you think, guys, about this technique? Again, we were able and successfully troubleshoot some problems, but I just show you the power of AutoCAD. We push the limits. Again, we use constraints. We did all type of things to again simplify this process of adding open to beyond areas. Now, from now on, everything should be quick, consistent, and easy. And that's the whole goal of why I'm here today and why I show up each Friday again, to show you new ways, new possibilities of working in AutoCAD. So let me know what you think. If you have any questions, let me know on the chat. So yeah, this was a challenging block. It gave us some problems, but it wasn't our fault. It was AutoCAD's fault. The test environment was crazy. It was wasn't behaving correctly. Oh. All right. If there are no questions, we're gonna start thinking on our next Friday topic. What are we gonna do there? Which task we're gonna show up here? Let's see. All right. So if there are no questions, if AutoCAD ever feels stressful, or you have your boss asking why things take so long, You might not be using the fastest methods. There is a better way to work. Join our community, the Lazy Arquitectos. It's a membership where I share everything I create, like today's dynamic blog. I also share macros, any other dynamic blocks, templates, drawings, with no limits. So if you saw it on YouTube, you'll get full access to it. So check it out at lazyarquitecto.com/members. Alright, I'm gonna see you here each Friday at 10 a.m. Hope you have a wonderful rest of the day. See you, everyone.